The grand procession was a river of light and sound flowing through the heart of the Galactic Empire's capital. The air shimmered with the glow of floating platforms and the cheers of countless citizens. Their skins were shades of metallic silver and deep blue, their clothes woven with light. This was a victory parade, a show of the Empire's great power. And at the very center of this show was a cage. It was not a fancy cage. It was made of rough, iron-like bars, a stark and ugly thing among all the shining beauty of the city. Inside the cage stood an old man. His name was June. He was a human. His hair was gray and his face was lined with many years. His simple clothes, a tunic and trousers of plain cloth, were dirty and torn. But he stood very straight, his shoulders back, his dark eyes calm as he watched the scene around him. A powerful repulsor beam pulled the cage along the wide boulevard. The crowd laughed and pointed. They threw glowing bits of soft, wet light that splattered against the bars. To them, June was a strange animal, a creature from a forgotten time. He was the prize of the Tavanii hegemony, a people the Empire had just conquered. The Tavanii had given him up, calling him a Terran survivor, a last piece of a dead race from a silent world. Walking proudly beside the cage was Commander Quan. He was a tall Imperial, his skin like polished chrome, his uniform a symbol of his high rank and ambition. He looked at the human in the cage with a mix of disgust and triumph. He spoke, and his voice was amplified to echo over the noise of the crowd. "People of the Empire," Quan's voice boomed, "see the fruit of our great victory. This is what remains of the humans, a weak race that never even learned to travel the stars. They hid on their single, lonely world until their lights went out forever. This one was found sleeping in a cold tomb, a relic of a dead species. Let his presence remind you of our strength. The Galaxy Empire is the peak of life." The crowd roared its approval. They saw a primitive being. He had no neural implants connecting him to the data streams. He gave off no energy signature. He was just flesh and bone, something to be pitted and mocked. June did not react to the noise or the insults. He did not flinch when the glowing slime hit the bars near his face. He simply watched. His eyes moved slowly, taking in everything. He saw the towering spires of the city, so high they seemed to scratch the sky. He saw the floating fortresses that hung in the air, their weapons silent for now. He listened to the hum of the city, a deep sound that came from everywhere at once. It was the sound of immense power, of a civilization that believed it owned the galaxy. June. This sound was familiar. It was a specific kind of energy hum, a harmonic frequency. He knew this sound. It was a very old sound. A small, almost invisible flicker of thought passed behind his calm eyes. He saw how all their power came from a few central places. He saw how their communication networks were open and loud, shouting their secrets to anyone who knew how to listen. He saw the beautiful, intricate web of their technology. And he saw that their greatest strength was also their biggest weakness. A web can always be untangled. The parade moved on, leaving a trail of excitement and pride in its wake. Finally, the cage was dragged off the main boulevard and into a large, sterile building. This was the Imperial Xenological Institute. It was a place for studying strange life forms. For June, it was to become his new home, a high-tech zoo. He was transferred from the iron cage to a clean, white cell. The walls were clear energy fields, humming softly. The air was cool and smelled of nothing. There was a cot to sleep on and a slot in the wall that provided a bland, nutritious paste. It was a cage far more advanced than the first, but a cage all the same. The scientists came. They were led by a woman named Sue. She was a brilliant xenobiologist, her skin a soft azure blue. She was curious, but years of working for the Empire had made her cynical. She saw June not as a person, but as a fascinating puzzle, a last remaining piece of a lost puzzle. For days, they ran their tests. They scanned his body, measured his brainwaves, tested his strength and his reflexes. They found nothing special. His muscles were weaker than the average Imperial citizen. His bones were more brittle. His brain activity was calm, too calm for their liking. They tried stress tests showing him loud noises and sudden lights. His heart rate barely changed. "The data is confusing, Commander," Sue reported to Quan one day, looking at her data slate. "He shows almost no physiological response to any stimulus. No fear. No anger. It is not natural. It is as if he is waiting for something." Quan, who was watching June through the clear wall of the cell, snorted. "Waiting for what? His world is dust. His people are ghosts. He is an animal, Sue, a simple creature. He is probably too stupid to understand his situation." Inside the cell, June sat on his cot. He was not stupid. He was patient. He spent his days watching the guards. He learned their routines. He saw when the day shift guard, a young man who always looked tired, would be replaced by the night shift guard, a woman who would often talk to herself. He listened to their casual conversations over the comm system. He learned their language, not just the official words, but the slang they used, the little jokes they told. He was piecing them together, learning how these people thought. Most of all, he studied the hum of the energy field that held him. He could feel its vibration through the floor. It was a specific frequency, a signature. It was a technology his people had understood long, long ago. It was a technology they had improved upon, and then ultimately moved beyond. Sometimes, when a particular piece of information clicked into place in his mind, a very small, very slight smile would touch the corners of his mouth. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of an engineer who has just found the solution to a complex problem. It was a smile of quiet understanding. And it was a smile that nobody ever saw. The days in the white cell turned into a quiet routine for June. The humming of the energy wall was a constant sound in his ears. He did not fight it. He did not pace or shout. He simply existed, a calm island in the middle of the sterile Imperial laboratory. The scientists, led by Sue, continued their work. They were frustrated. Their machines could tell them everything about June's body, but nothing about his mind. They brought in different devices. One machine scanned the deep structures of his brain, looking for hidden activity. Another took tiny samples of his blood and skin, searching for any unusual genetic markers. All the tests came back the same. June was biologically unremarkable. His body was weaker than an Imperial child's. His reflexes were slow. According to all their science, he was nothing. Sue watched him for hours through the clear wall of his cell. She saw him sit for long periods with his eyes closed, not sleeping, just breathing slowly. She saw him do simple stretches, moving his old body with a careful grace. Sometimes he would look directly at the security camera, his dark eyes seeming to see right through the lens and into her own. It was unsettling. She tried to talk to him. She entered the cell, the energy wall flickering off for a moment to let her in. She stood before him, a tablet in her hand. "June," she said, using the name the Tavanii had given them. "Can you understand me?" He looked at her. He gave a small, slow nod. "Good," Sue said. She felt a strange relief. "Can you tell me about your world? About Earth?" June was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice a low, rough sound, like stones rubbing together. "It was a garden," he said simply. Sue blinked. "A garden?" Every species described their homeworld with words like powerful, or advanced, or rich. "A garden? What does that mean?" But June just looked away, ending the conversation. He would not say more. She reported this to Commander Quan. "He speaks our language." He called his homeworld a garden. "It is a strange choice of words." Quan waved a dismissive hand. "Poetry from a primitive. It means nothing. He lived on a planet full of plants. It does not change the fact that they are all dead. The Tavanii records are unclear on how the humans died out," Sue pointed out. "There is no record of a war or a disaster. Their world just went quiet, because they were too weak to survive." Quan said, his voice sharp. "That is the lesson here, Sue. Strength is everything. The Empire is strong, so we survive. The humans were weak, so they died. This one is just a leftover, a piece of trash that did not get cleaned up. Do not waste your time looking for deep meaning in his words." But Sue could not let it go. The word garden stuck in her mind. It did not fit. She went back to her data. She looked at the physiological readings from when June had spoken. There was no spike in brain activity, no sign of emotion. It was as if he was stating a simple, boring fact. The sky is blue.
Water is wet.
Earth was a garden. Meanwhile, June continued his own work. He was a patient observer. He watched the guards, learning their patterns. The day shift guard, a young man named Day, was lazy. He often leaned against the wall, scrolling through entertainment feeds on his personal device. He was predictable. The night shift guard, a woman named Hannah, was more careful. She did her rounds on time, but she talked to herself, muttering about her superiors and her duties. June learned a lot from her muttered words. He also listened to the hum of the energy field. He could feel its vibration through the soles of his feet. It was a specific frequency. He recognized it. It was a very old design, a type of contained plasma field. His people had used similar principles millennia ago, but they had found it clumsy. They had developed a much more elegant solution, one that worked with the fabric of space itself, not against it. June. The entire Imperial capital was like a giant, noisy machine. Every part of it shouted. Their power grids broadcast their location with massive energy signatures. Their communication networks were like loud, open channels with everyone talking at once. There was no subtlety, no quiet efficiency. It was all brute force and showy power. He began to notice the small routines of the laboratory itself. He saw the cleaning drones that came every night, their simple programming making them follow the same paths. He saw how the main computer system performed a data backup at the same time each day, causing a tiny, almost imperceptible dip in the power flow for a fraction of a second. He was an engineer. And an engineer understands systems. He was mapping this one in his mind, learning every wire, every circuit, every flaw. He was looking for the loose thread that would allow him to unravel the entire sweater point one day. Sue decided on a different test. She brought a complex puzzle into the cell. It was a four-dimensional crystal lattice, a favorite toy of imperial scientists. It was considered a good test of intelligence and spatial reasoning. She placed it on a table in front of June. "Can you solve this?" she asked. June looked at the shimmering, shifting crystal. He reached out a hand, his fingers moving slowly. He did not try to force it or twist it. He simply touched a few specific points on its surface in a particular sequence. The crystal, which should have taken an imperial scholar hours to decode, glowed brightly and then fell still, perfectly aligned. It was solved. Sue stared, her mouth slightly open. It was impossible. It was luck. It had to be luck. June looked up at her. There was no pride in his eyes. No satisfaction. It was the look a teacher gives a student who has just learned a basic lesson. Then he did something strange. He picked up the solved crystal and, with a gentle tap of his finger on a point Sue had never seen before, he caused it to emit a low, soft chime. A chime that was not part of its programmed functions. The sound made the lights in the cell flicker for a microsecond. Sue stumbled back. "How did you do that?" June placed the crystal back on the table. "It is an old design," he said. "There are echoes in the system." He would not explain further. Sue left the cell, her mind racing. Echoes in the system? What did that mean? She reported the incident to Quan. Her voice filled with a new, uncertain fear. "He is not what he seems, Commander. There is a knowledge there. A deep knowledge." Quan was angry. He tricked a children's puzzle. "You are letting this primitive get inside your head, Sue. He is a caged animal performing a trick. Nothing more. I will prove it to you." Quan decided it was time for a real interrogation. He would break this old man's silent act and show everyone that he was just a scared, lonely creature. He ordered June to be prepared for a session in the high-security interrogation room that as two guards came to take him from his cell. June went peacefully. He looked at Sue as he passed her. His eyes were still calm, but now she saw something else in them. It was not fear. It was a kind of pity. It was the look you give someone who is about to make a very, very big mistake. The guards led him away down the bright, white hallway. June walked slowly, his head held high. He was still observing. He noted the security doors, the types of locks they used, the positions of the cameras. He was still learning. The map in his mind was almost complete. He knew now where the loose thread was. He just needed the right moment to pull it. The interrogation room was a cold, hard place. The walls were a dull gray metal, and the only light came from a single, bright panel in the ceiling. In the center of the room was a heavy chair, bolted to the floor. The air smelled of ozone and cleaning solution. It was a room designed to make a person feel small and alone. June sat in the chair. He was not restrained. The Imperials did not think he was a physical threat. His calmness was seen as weakness, not control. He waited, his hands resting on his knees, his breathing even. The door hissed open and Commander Quan strode in. He was wearing his formal uniform, all sharp lines and gleaming badges. He wanted to look powerful, to intimidate. He stood over June, his shadow falling across the old man. "So," Quan began, his voice echoing in the bare room. "The Silent One finally speaks. I am told you have been sharing stories about gardens." June looked up, but his eyes were not on Quan's face. They were focused on a point just behind the commander's left ear, where a tiny communication device was implanted. June could hear the faint, high-pitched whine of its power source. Quan misread the look. "Your protectors, the Tavanii, are broken. Their worlds now belong to the Empire. Your species is extinct. You have nothing left, but you can make your remaining years comfortable. Tell me what you know about the Tavanii central shield frequencies. They trusted you. You must have seen something." June's gaze slowly moved to meet Quan's eyes. For the first time, his focus was direct and intense. It was like being stared at by a mountain, old and unmovable. "You are digging in a graveyard," June said, his voice still rough but now clear and firm. "You are looking for bones, unaware of what sleeps beneath the soil. The Tavanii were temporary neighbors. They were loud. You are louder." Quan's face tightened with anger. This was not the fearful begging he expected. This was defiance. This was riddles. He leaned in close, his voice a low growl. "You dare? You dare to speak in nonsense to me? I am a commander of the Galaxy Empire. You are nothing. A relic. A fossil." He swung his arm, the back of his hand connecting hard with June's face. The sound was a sharp crack in the quiet room. June's head snapped to the side. A thin trickle of blood began to flow from his split lip. Slowly, June turned his head back. He lifted a hand and wiped the blood away with his fingers. He looked at the red smear on his skin, then back at Quan. There was no anger in his eyes. No hatred. There was only a deep, bottomless pity. It was a look that saw Quan not as a powerful commander, but as a foolish child playing with a weapon he did not understand. And then, June's smile. It was not a big smile. It did not show many teeth, but it transformed his entire face. The lines around his eyes crinkled. It was a smile of serene and absolute certainty. It was the smile of a man who has just finished a long and difficult calculation and knows, without a doubt, that the answer is correct. It was a smile that held no joy, only a quiet, terrifying finality. That smile sent a jolt of pure, animal fear straight into Quan's heart. It was colder than ice. It was more frightening than any battle he had ever fought. For a second, the mighty commander felt like a small creature caught in the gaze of a predator it had not known was there. He took an involuntary step back. In that exact moment, the world ended. A deafening alarm blared through the entire complex, so loud it felt like a physical blow. The single bright light in the ceiling flickered wildly and then died, plunging the room into utter blackness. For a heartbeat, there was only the screaming alarm and the darkness. Then, emergency red lights snapped on, casting a bloody, pulsing glow. Quan stumbled, grabbing the wall for support. He could hear shouts and the sound of running feet from the corridor. His personal communicator, implanted in his ear, erupted into a screech of static so painful he cried out and ripped the tiny device from his ear. In the chaotic red light, he looked at June. The old man was still sitting calmly in the chair. The smile was gone, but the calmness remained. He was looking at the door, as if he was expecting someone. "What did you do?" Quan yelled over the alarm, his voice shaking. "What is this?" June did not answer. He simply stood up from the chair. He walked to the door of the interrogation room. The electronic lock, which should have been impossible to open without a command code, was dark and dead. June placed his hand flat against the metal near the lock. Quan saw a faint, almost invisible shimmer of energy pass from June's palm into the door. There was a soft click. June pushed the door open and stepped out into the hallway. Quan stared, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. It was impossible. The doors were powered by a separate, secure system. He scrambled after June, his own panic rising. The corridor was chaos. Imperial soldiers were running in every direction, their weapons drawn but with no enemy to fight. The red emergency lights flashed on and off, creating a strobe effect that made the panic worse. Some people were shouting, trying to give orders. Others were just crouching against the walls, their hands over their ears. June ignored them all. He walked down the hallway with a clear purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. He moved like a man taking a quiet stroll through a park. Soldiers bumped into him and did not even seem to see him. In their panic, the calm old man was invisible. Quan followed, his mind racing. This was not an attack. There were no explosions, no enemy troops. This was a systems failure. A complete and total systems failure of the most advanced city in the galaxy. And it had happened the moment the human had smiled. He saw June turn a corner and head towards the central control nexus, the brain of the entire facility. Quan broke into a run, pushing past confused technicians. He had to stop him. He had to understand. He burst into the control nexus. The large room was usually a hive of quiet activity, filled with glowing screens and busy operators. Now it was dark and silent. The giant main view screen that showed the status of the capital city was completely black. The only light came from the flashing red alarms. In the center of the room, June stood before the main control terminal. Sue was there too, hiding behind a console, her face pale with terror. She watched June, her scientific curiosity fighting with her fear. June placed his hands on the dark terminal. He did not type. He did not press any buttons. He just stood there, his palms flat on the cool surface. Quan saw a faint, golden light flicker under the skin of June's hands, a web of tiny, glowing lines that pulsed for a moment and then faded. Then, the main view screen flickered to life, but it did not show the city status. Instead, a single line of text appeared, written in the clean, simple script of the Imperial language. It was a message that burned itself into the screens of every working device in the capital, from the largest command center to the personal tablets of ordinary citizens. The message said, "The gardeners have returned. Stand by for de-weeding." Quan read the words, and a cold dread filled his stomach. He did not understand what they meant, but he knew they were bad. He looked at June, who had taken his hands from the terminal. The old man turned and looked directly at Quan. His work here was done. "The noise," June said, his voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the blaring alarm. "It is time to turn it off." The message hung in the air, a silent, digital ghost haunting the entire planet. "The gardeners have returned. Stand by for de-weeding." On every screen, in every home, on every vehicle dashboard, the words glowed. For a moment, The panic in the control room was replaced by a confused silence. No one understood. Gardeners? They waiting? What did it mean? Commander Quan was the first to break. He pointed a shaking finger at June. Seize him. Now. He has done this. Two soldiers, jolted from their shock, moved forward. But June did not run. He simply looked at them, and they stopped, uncertain. The calm in his eyes was more powerful than any weapon. Then, the real change began. Outside, in the city, the red emergency lights flickered and died. The screaming alarms cut off mid-wail. An even deeper silence fell, heavy and terrifying. The low, constant hum of the city, the sound of power of life vanished. It was a silence no living Imperial had ever heard. It was the silence of the grave. The only light now came from the two moons in the sky, casting long, dark shadows through the silent streets. The floating fortresses, those symbols of Imperial power, were dark shapes against the stars. They began to drift, slowly, like leaves on a pond, their gravity drives dead. Inside the control room, the main view screen changed. It now showed a map of the galaxy. A small, lonely star system near the edge of Imperial space began to pulse with a soft, green light. The label next to it read, Terran Prime, the Empire's name for a dead world. From that pulsing point of light, a signal was broadcast. It was not a radio wave or a laser. It was something else, something that moved through a layer of reality the Empire did not know existed. It was a quantum trigger, a single simple note played on the fabric of the universe. And the universe answered. In the asteroid belt of a nearby system, where Imperial mining ships worked, a large asteroid suddenly glowed with the same soft green light. Its rocky surface cracked and fell away like an eggshell. Inside was not rock, but a ship. It was not made of metal and wires. It looked like it was grown, not built, its shape flowing and organic, like polished stone and living would fuse together. It moved, slipping into real space without a sound. The same thing happened in a glowing nebula the Empire used as a major shipping lane. A cloud of gas and dust coalesced, its colors shifting until it formed another one of the organic-looking vessels. It did not announce its presence. It simply was. And high above the Imperial capital itself, space itself seemed to tear open. A rip in the starry blackness appeared, and from it emerged the largest ship of all. It was serene and beautiful, shaped like a vast, sleeping seed. It blocked out the light of the moons, casting the entire city into a deep shadow. There were no roaring engines, no blaring weapons charging up. There was only a profound, unstoppable quiet on the ground. People poured into the streets, looking up at the sky. They pointed and screamed, but their screams were tiny in the immense silence. They saw the giant seed ship and the other organic vessels now taking positions around their world. This was not a blockade. It was an embrace. Back in the control room, Quan stared at the view screen, his face white. He saw the reports flooding in from what little backup communication was left. Ships appearing everywhere. Our technology is non-responsive. Sue stepped out from behind her console, her eyes wide, not with fear now, but with a staggering awe. She was not looking at the screen. She was looking at June. You are a gardener? She whispered. June nodded slowly. He walked to a large, reinforced window that looked out over the dark city and the star-filled sky above it. We are the ones who make sure the garden does not become a desert, he said, his voice calm. We prune the branches that grow too wild. We remove the weeds that choke the life from other plants. Quan stumbled towards the window, his body trembling with rage and terror. Weeds? You call us weeds? June glanced at him. You call yourselves the pinnacle. You conquer. You consume. You leave only silence behind you. The Tavanii were on that path. You are far, far down it. The galaxy is a delicate ecosystem. It cannot survive endless empires like yours. As they watched, the giant seed ship high in the atmosphere began to act. It did not fire lasers or missiles. Instead, it projected a gentle wave of green light that washed over the city. Where the light touched, something incredible happened at an Imperial skyscraper. A tower of gleaming chrome and glass began to change. Its sharp, hard edges softened. The metal seemed to flow, transforming into a smooth, warm, wooden surface. Windows morphed into openings that looked like they belonged in a giant tree. Vines, bursting with glowing flowers, snaked up its sides. The building was not destroyed. It was remade. It was brought into harmony with a different kind of design. On the streets, the green light touched a parked military vehicle. The hardened steel armor softened and shifted, its color changing from dull gray to a rich, earthy brown. It settled, its sharp angles rounding, until it looked like a large, smooth boulder covered in moss. The weapon was gone. It was now part of the landscape. This was their weapon. Not destruction. Reclamation. It was a technology that spoke to the base matter of things and asked it to remember a different, more natural form. It asked Imperial technology to simply stop being technology. Quan watched as the central power generator for the capital, a massive complex of spinning reactors and energy conduits, was bathed in the green light. The metal structures sagged and melted, not like something burning, but like ice melting into water. They flowed together and reformed into a low, rolling hill, covered in soft, green grass and strange, twisting trees. The terrifying hum of the generator was replaced by the sound of wind through leaves. The Empire was not being conquered. It was being erased, peacefully and utterly, and replaced with a park. June stood at the window, a quiet satisfaction on his face. He watched the green light do its work, turning a city of arrogant power into the beginnings of a garden. He had pressed the button. He had awakened the gardeners. His long, long wait was over. The green light continued its gentle, unstoppable work. It moved through the capital not like a wave of destruction, but like a tide of quiet change. Where it passed, the hard, sharp city of the Galaxy Empire softened. Gleaming towers became great, silent trees. Streets paved with metal turned into pathways of soft moss and flat, warm stone. The air, which had smelled of ozone and industry, now carried the fresh scent of rain and growing things. The only sounds were the wind and the distant, peaceful calls of alien birds that had begun to appear in the newly formed branches. The people were unharmed. They stood in small, confused groups, their fine clothes looking silly and out of place in the new, wild landscape. They watched their world transform around them. There were no fires, no screams of the dying. There was only a profound and shocking peace. Their weapons were rocks. Their vehicles were small, rolling hills. Their power was gone. Commander Quan stood on a balcony that was now part of a giant, wooden structure that had once been his command tower. He looked out over the garden that had been his city. His uniform felt heavy and meaningless. His rank, his power, his entire life, it had all been rendered useless in less than an hour. He was not a commander anymore. He was just a man. Standing in a forest he did not understand that he saw June walking towards him. The old man moved slowly through the transformed landscape, his hand brushing against the bark of a new-formed tree, as if greeting an old friend. He stopped a few feet from Quan. "What are you?" Quan whispered again, his voice broken. He was not asking what species June was. He was asking what kind of being could do this. June looked at the former commander, his eyes holding no anger. "We are the reason the galaxy is not a battlefield of endless war. We are the balance. A very, very long time ago, my people learned a hard lesson. We saw that life, when it becomes too technological, too powerful, always turns destructive. It consumes everything until there is nothing left. We almost did it to ourselves." He gestured to the peaceful scene around them. "So we changed. We did not give up technology. We learned to weave it into life, not force life to serve it. We became gardeners. Our purpose is to tend to the galaxy. We watch, we wait, and when a civilization grows too wild, too destructive to the ecosystem around it, we prune it. We let life start again in a new way." Quan shook his head, trying to understand. You judge us? You decide we are weeds and you just pull us out. We do not judge your art or your music or your dreams," June said patiently. "We measure your footprint. Your empire consumed stars for fuel. You strip-mined worlds until they were dust. You enslaved other species. You were a fire, burning its way through the forest. We do not put out the fire by fighting it. We remove the fuel." As he spoke, the first of the human dropships descended. They were not angular and threatening. They were smooth and quiet, shaped like falling seeds. They landed softly in clearings among the new trees. The hatches opened, but no soldiers came out. Instead, men and women dressed in simple, practical clothes stepped onto the grass. They carried tools but not weapons. They carried data slates but not shields. They were teachers, engineers, biologists. Their job was not to conquer, but to help point. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, approached a group of frightened Imperial children. She knelt down and showed them a small device. A moment later, a hologram of a glowing, six-legged animal appeared, playing happily. The children's fear slowly turned to wonder. Quan watched this, and the last of his pride shattered. They were not even being occupied by warriors. They were being taught. It was the greatest humiliation he could imagine. "Your empire is over," June said, his voice final. "But your species is not. You will be re-educated. You will learn to live within the ecosystem of a planet, not as its master. You will learn our ways of harmony. It will take generations. It will be difficult, but you will survive. You will become something new, something better." He looked up at the sky, where the great seed ship hung, a silent moon. "This is not your end, Commander. It is your long overdue beginning. You were lost, and we have shown you the path home. June then turned and began to walk away towards one of the seed-like dropships. His work here was done. The trigger had been pulled. The gardeners were awake and tending to their garden once more. Sue, the scientist, ran after him. Wait, where are you going? June paused and looked back at her. There are other gardens, other places that need care. My sleep is over. Will you come back? She asked. June gave her a small, genuine smile, the first one that held any warmth. There is no need. The gardeners who stay will help you grow. Learn from them. Your curiosity is a gift. Use it to understand this new world, not to conquer it. He then stepped into the ship. The hatch closed silently behind him. The dropship lifted off without a sound, rising up towards the great vessel in the sky. Quan stood on the balcony, watching it go. He was no longer a commander. He was just a man in a garden. The noise, the power, the glory of the galaxy empire was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of insects and the rustle of leaves. He looked at his people, huddled and confused below. He saw the human teachers moving among them, speaking in calm, low voices. He felt a strange and unexpected emotion. It was not hope, not yet. It was relief. The burden of constant conquest, the pressure of endless power, was gone. It had been lifted from his shoulders. The universe was not a thing to be owned. It was a thing to be a part of. He took a deep breath of the clean, green air. The empire was dead. But for the first time in his life, Quan felt like something might finally begin to live.